from the Workplace Ninja Summit in Luzerne. Highlights, insights, and simply interesting talks. This is the Workplace Ninja Podcast.
And we're back with a new recording on the Workplace Ninja Summit 2024 here in Luzerne. My name is Frans Oudendorp, and I have with me two very interesting people from the Microsoft security team, from the Defender for Office team. Girish, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
And Sumit, you're also here.
Thank you so much.
So first of all, a welcome. But Girish, what's your role within Microsoft? What are you doing in your day job?
I've been with Microsoft for quite some time now, more than 2.5 decades, I think. Right now, I'm the general manager for Defender for Office. I run the product and engineering teams.
Yeah. And Sumit, your role?
I am the group product manager for Defender for Office. I've been with Microsoft just close to 10 years, and most of them have been in Defender for Office.
Yeah.
Super excited to be here today.
Yeah, we were already talking a bit offline. There are a lot of enhancements going on in the security space, but also in Defender for Office. So we will take a bet on that as well. And I love the fact that what I was saying offline already. I love the fact that you're here, standing on the podium, sharing the experiences, getting feedback into the from customers, from attendees here as well. So I love that you're here.
It's very intentional. We actually want to show up in force, kind of drive the security message hard at the Ninja. The folks show up here are valuable sources of feedback for us, and we really want to engage.
Yeah, great. You did a session on this event, but first, I know we met at the MVP Summit and for a while already. What excites you to be here on an event with sysadmins, with on a workplace focused event? What is the thing that you excite the most?
I guess I'll start.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I just alluded to this. When you think about workspace, you had to think in terms of what it means to secure the workspace. I mean, they go hand in hand today. While this event has had its roots in kind of the IT pros and the admin space, security is pretty top of mind for a lot of our customers. Yeah. We've actually engaged with a bunch of folks who are here who've actually brought us feedback, and we've had a good engagement with them. So it's been kind of an intentional exercise this year, and you'll see us carry this forward going forth in future years as well, to show up at such events, engage, get feedback, and actually make security a bigger purpose and front and center for a lot more of the attendees here.
And how's that for you, Sumit?
It's great. I always say security is a team sport, right? So having this community be here and us be part of that community is awesome. Just to kind of echo what Girish said, Defender for Office, right? Our charter is to secure collaboration. I look at collaboration, I look at workspace, I look at how people are using the tools to talk to each other, especially in today's hybrid environment. This is core to how we all work. So this is awesome to be here, awesome to talk about what we're doing, and obviously take that feedback into improving the product itself.
Yeah, and if you're looking at the session that you gave, what was that about?
When do you start?
Sure.
You were primary on.
So the session, we had a session yesterday that was focused on Defender for Office 365. We predominantly focused on a quick overview of the product. We talked about how the product works, how it naturally, is part of the XDR suite for Microsoft.
Yeah.
How we natively integrate into our SIEM. We did spend a lot of time talking about modern day threats, something we hear about a lot from our customers. And what we were excited to talk about yesterday is a lot of the investments we've made in addressing those threats. And so, right before the session, we were talking about QR codes.
Yeah.
I did this QR code dance in the session where I said, hey, they were all over the place last year. And, with everything we've done at scale, it's become the returns on investment for QR codes for attackers now is very low. We've just seen a drastic reduction. So we talked a little bit about that. We talked a lot about our XDR integrations. Defender for Office 365, Defender for Endpoint, Cloud Apps, Identity. We are all part of that ecosystem. So the innovation we're driving there with automation, with hunting, with Security Copilot now, that was a great theme of the session. And last but not the least, the thing that I was the most excited to talk about is our efforts in securing teams. We know this, we hear this from you,
Yeah.
and we hear this from our customers, but that is kind of the next frontier. So, staying ahead of that, getting in there and helping make sure that we're protecting collaboration where end users are. So that's exciting.
And what a lot of features into the product integrations, but the key takeaway for attendees, what was the message?
I'll start here. I think Sumit alluded to this. When you think about the attack landscape, collaboration is kind of the place where attackers gravitate towards. I think the percentages vary, but most agree that it's close to 90 or plus percentage of attacks are orchestrated over some collaboration medium. Primarily email today, but we are going to see that increasingly shift towards mediums like Teams in the workspace. And the key takeaway is when you think about the workspace and kind of securing it, you got to think about all of the facets that Sumit just covered, the advanced threats, the things that we need to do from a posture standpoint, to configuring it right, to also from a SecOps standpoint, how do we actually keep this loop of detection response faster? And so key message is be cognizant that we're operating in a world that is, it's a darling space for attackers, and which means we've got to keep, as a collective, it's a team sport, as Sumit suggested, as a collective, figure out what it means to secure it. And on our side, we talked about a whole bunch of features, but what that translates to really is how are we keeping up with the attacks and how are we actually looking around the corner to be further protected from attacks coming in. And that's going to be a constant wave of innovation across all of the pillars Sumit covered in his session, where we think in terms of posture, where we think in terms of prevention, detection, response, automation, and end user education. Like it all needs to go together for us to actually combat these threats.
It's still a cat and mouse game that we have to face. And I think that's challenging from a customer perspective, but also from a development perspective, with AIs coming in. So that drives also within MDO. But the specific position that MDO has in the XDR environment, so we can do it as a standalone product, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Can you elaborate a little bit on that, Sumit? How MDO is positioned within XDR?
Yeah, it's a great question. I was sharing with you right before the session that I've been with this team for a majority of my tenure at Microsoft. And in fact, I was engaged with the very early incarnations of XDR. This is when XDR was MDE and MDO, Defender for Endpoint and Defender for Office. So the way I think about Defender for Office and XDR is we're there. If you're a SOC team in the incident queue, we're there. Our alerts are there. If you're using the threat investigation surfaces, we're in there. We have our email-specific, scenarios. And if you think about the APIs, a lot of our customers tell us, hey, listen, we love your portal. It's absolutely fantastic, but we live here, right, in our SIEM and our SOAR. The Defender APIs, we're there too. So if I think about how we're positioned as a product, we are in the fabric of XDR. Now, it's fair feedback, and this is the feedback we've been taking through the session as well, is there's more to do, right? There's more to do with incident correlation. There's more to do with AI, with Copilot, and all of that feedback is great. There's more to do with the unified role-based access. All those are journeys that we're on, along with the other products in XDR. But I really think of us as being unified, truly unified in the SOC platform. In fact, you heard in Ramya's keynote yesterday how prominent a strategy that is for us. And Defender for Office is right there in the center. If we look at a lot of deep usage internally from customers, and if you look at the deep usage in a scenario like advanced hunting on some of the telemetry that we expose there, the custom detections, it's phenomenal to see how that community has grown around us. So yeah, we're very excited. But like I said, more work to do.
Yeah. I will add, I think XDR for us is our secret sauce in the vendor landscape, right? Yeah. I mean, I alluded to how social engineering attacks are the way attackers are primarily gravitating towards targeting customers. And when you think in terms of those primarily being orchestrated over email or Teams or collaboration vectors, yes, we can do it as a standalone product, but the secret sauce where we're able to see the attack orchestrated end-to-end and tie that entire kill chain end-to-end as one vendor across the different Defender products in one pane of glass, as Sumit alluded to, is actually magic, right?
Yeah.
You take a look at the competitive landscape and folks trying to mimic some things like this with partnerships across vendors. I'll tell you, it is super hard to do this within one company across Defender products. It is not actually impossible to do this at this level of quality and detail when you're working across organizations, across companies. And so I think it's a secret sauce for us. Clearly, we have a lot more to do, but I'm quite excited about this XDR journey that we're on.
Yeah. Luckily, we have something to do. Otherwise, you can sit down but MDO, from back in the days, it was Exchange Online Protection. That's where it all starts with. But nowadays, it's much, much more. We must defending Team, SharePoint, OneDrive probably as well. I think moving forward with that, also security awareness, one of my favorite topics on that. There is a new feature that was announced, I think, a few weeks ago, the QR code stuff. What is that?
Yeah. So I'll start and then Girish can add. With QR codes, I referenced this earlier. There's this huge, enormous surge in threats in QR codes, and these were things like URLs or redirectors embedded in QR codes, and they were hard when it came through, and we saw other vendors as well really struggle with it. But I think there's an important lesson with QR codes there too. So what we're able to do today, of course, is at scale in runtime, we're able to extract the URL from the QR code. And then, of course, we have, I cover this in my session, we have this multi-layered defense in depth stack. We can run all our detections on URLs on the QR code, because once we have it out of the QR code, we know what it is.
Yep.
We can do it. But the important lesson we have is, if you're going to do something like this, and this is an attack disruption lesson in my opinion, you got to do it at scale based on the primary indicator, right? In this case, it's a URL. Get that, do it at scale. We see so much of the world's email. We're the largest enterprise email provider, right? Doing it that scale, it just makes it virtually, it makes it really hard for the attackers to do something with it, because we're just blocking it. Now, we also know that there are going to be things like evasion. So this is where we don't stop with just prevention. This is kind of completing that life cycle from a security perspective that Girish referenced, right? Great, okay, you blocked, but security teams want to be able to hunt over it. Security teams want to be able to reason over it. This is where in our XDR integrations that we just talked about, QR codes show up. You can hunt for it in advanced hunting. You can look at it in the email entity. You can write custom detections, proactive detections with actions on it. And then we know that's not enough even, right? Like yourself, people have said, hey, listen, that's great, but I also want my end users to be aware of this. Yep. And so we've kind of really completed that loop where now in the product, you can actually do QR code-based simulations and trainings. And we've seen phenomenal usage on that front too. So completing that cycle, that is critical for us. So we do this is a principle we follow with our detections now. And QR codes is a great example of it.
Yep.
Anything you wanted to add, Girish?
I'll just say, I think you touched upon this, but I'll just say, sometimes internally I refer to our product as defending the human. Collaboration is such an innate human endeavor, right? And when you think about all these social engineering attacks, the target is really the human, right? Can you lure them? Can you dupe them? Can you catch them at a moment of lack of clarity or vulnerability, and then catch them doing things for you that you didn't intend otherwise? It's in order to defend the human, you cannot leave out, this fundamental notion of how do we help the humans understand this landscape better, right? Yeah. Right? Which is why in every investment, it's this loop that Sumit alluded to. It's not just thinking about prevention and how do we help the SOC teams and how do we get the config right. It's about how do we help the human reason over this? Because let's face it, there's going to be FNs. They're going to see things. How do they distinguish and arm themselves better to know that what's legitimate, what's not? And so this loop is something we hold near and dear to our heart as we protect the human.
Yeah. Let me give you an example because the human factor is so important on this. Because one of my customers, a partner of them, was hacked. The email system. So they send out phishing email from that company to companies that are partner in a relationship with them. Mm-hmm. So I receive an email that's legit because it's from someone I trust, and then there's a phishing link in it. Okay. So that is quite hard. So I think the human factor in it is so really important. How do you see that regarding security awareness within the product?
It's when we talk about the human factor and we talk about training and using simulations as a way to anchor it, couple of the other dimensions of readiness of users that we don't talk about often is it's not just about training them and using simulations. It's about saying, hey, in the way they work on a day-to-day basis, right? How do we give them the relevant hints that something is amiss, right? We talk a lot about safety tips and things that we put natively in the Outlook client, for example, things we insert in the email itself. But there's another dimension of this, which is how do we also encourage users to do the right thing? Let's say an email hits the three of us.
Yep.
I'm poor schmo and I get duped and I hit it, right? But you're the smart one and you get the same mail and you're like, hey, actually, I'm aware I've got this. And you submit something to the SOC team that's Sumit. Sumit is able to actually see that, get that, and make sure that nobody else in the org has actually got that. That loop, it's both the reduce the negative behavior but promote the positive behavior. That's key to these simulations, that key to this awareness.
Yep.
And so in the example you cited, right, it's keeping that antenna up in order to and this is a pretty extreme scenario for users to actually say, hey, it's coming from a legitimate partner, I'm clicking a link, am I paying that much attention, should be aware of it. But if this is going across a set of users and you have more people who are actually playing the positive aspects of this as well, I think it's golden.
Yeah.
The other aspect I will say is this is where I think the XDR connection matters and our scale matters, right?
Definitely.
So when we think about our scale, because remember, we also run Intel on the outbound side. And so it happens to be one of these vendors is using our product and we have those Intel, we can actually apply our intelligence coming from the outbound side to the inbound side. And with XDR, with our integrations in the identity, we can actually take a corrective action on the compromised entity as part of that disruption.
Yeah.
I
love that because that example that I've shared, that is real life. And that's especially email. So we're collaborating with each other, not only on email. We are doing that on Teams and other things as well. Okay. So I think the threat landscape, the human factor is important, will be broader and broader, and I think in the future it will be even broader than we have nowadays. Yeah. What do you think about that?
I think you're right. In fact, I'll say that one of the funnest parts of my job is not just working on the scenarios that are helping security teams protect the end users, but it's actually protecting the end users themselves, right? Yep. So we have the fun job of actually securing collaboration in the clients themselves. Yep. So just kind of taking an example, end users expect to know or be able to report something where they work. Right? Like if I see something suspicious, what do I do? What's the workflow from here? How do I get in touch with my security team? Tell me if this message came from a person outside my organization. We do this in Teams now. Yeah. Give me the opportunity to block it. Give me the opportunity to allow it if I think it's legitimate. Give me some intelligence. And so the way I think of end users in the future is they're going to be an extension of the security teams. They are going to be the extension of the security, truly an extension of the security program. And so think of this as the crowdsourcing an organization is going to use to drive all that security and that posture across their organization. It is going to be that way.
Yeah, and luckily we have pieces already in there, in my opinion. Please add to that if you want to. The scenario that Girish, that you gave a few seconds ago. If there is an email with a phishing link, it's arriving in the organization, someone is clicking on that, and others have that email in the mailbox, someone is submitting that as a true positive, then we can, with Zero Auto Purge sub, we can remove that in the complete organization and do other stuff as well.
Right.
And then I think you elaborate a little bit on the XDR. If I click a link with the Defender for Endpoint and it's detected, that works quite the same way. So with XDR, the integration is the important piece, in my opinion.
Absolutely. In fact, I'll just add to that example that you shared, and this is a very common example for security teams today in the email space. An end user reports a message, and then the security team, of course, has to triage it. And this is an actual, this is a workload. This is a significant workload for most security teams. I spent some time in my session talking about some of the automation capabilities that we have in product today. So that entire loop that Girish had alluded to earlier, where the email comes in, the SOC team gets an alert, that entire loop through investigation, triage, response, including feedback back to the end user, we've actually automated that cycle. So, this is kind of a game changer for security teams because they can save that much time. through that entire loop. And for a lot of teams, they're doing that manually today. So it's very intensive, and that's taking away from other things that they should be focusing on.
And we're talking about email already on Teams, QR code, security awareness. You elaborate a bit on that. The training part is important, the phishing part, but I think we have integration with Teams as well at the moment.
Yes.
And more to do. So we have integration with Teams. When you think in terms of safe links for Teams or safe attachments for Teams, malicious content going over Teams, we're able to detect that and apply similar logic that we're able to do. But there is admittedly a lot more to do, especially as Teams expands to being a tool that was primarily targeted as being within a organization collaboration to opening up federation and saying, hey, this can be the way to communicate cross-tenant. Obviously, that increases the attack surface. And the way we're working with the Teams organization is actually hand in glove. We've got to think about what it means to open up from an access and collaboration standpoint to how we secure that access and collaboration. Actually, the exciting part for us, we do this on a day-to-day basis, is we have all these years of learnings from 25 years of email in existence, 25 plus years of emails in existence, and we can actually apply all of those learnings, but adapt them to Teams. Teams is a fundamentally different communication paradigm, right? It's real-time communication. So what does it mean to actually protect a message as it's going from you to you? And how do we kind of intersect that? Or if we can't, how do we actually come soon after the fact and actually do this? So when you think about the play out of all the attacks that we've seen in email over the past 20, 30 years kind of change, right? Phishing attacks and then whaling attacks and then, whether it's weaponized URLs, QR codes, nested URLs, impersonation, spoof attempts, all of those things are going to be played out in a much smaller window of evolution in Teams. And so it's about taking all of that learnings that we have from the email world and adapting it, and then closing the loop, as we've been talking about, right? Which is not just about prevention, it's how you can do that with better detections, how you can make messages available for hunting, for SOC teams to go and actually detect and respond. How do we automate the entire process, the entire loop? It's a journey. We're
definitely
very at the early stages of it, admittedly.
Yeah, I love that. What about? We can talk about vision and in future. But maybe that are the difficult ones, because there's a lot going on in the field, and you are working on features that you can share about, and so on. Is there something that you can share about the next step, maybe from a strategy perspective?
I alluded to this before. I love the phrase "defend the human," right? Because what that allows you is it focuses us on the core asset, in this case, the human, as opposed to thinking about this purely along the dimensions of, it's email or it's Teams or SharePoint or OneDrive, right? Because when you start thinking about what it means to truly defend the human from social engineering attacks, the vector is material, but it's not the area of focus. You got to adapt your technologies to it. The area of focus is how to make the users resilient, right? Prevention, detection, and that entire loop that we talked about. But once you say that, it opens up from a strategic standpoint to say, okay, if you really truly have to protect the human, what does it mean to protect them, how they operate? And now you build all these connections with saying, okay, what are the vectors of communication? How do we protect the communication? But then how do we actually integrate cross-XDR, MDA, MDI, identity, Entra, MDE, all of these Defender products to say, okay, how do we intersect the right signals and complete that loop even better and tighter? And that's core to our vision. That's core to our strategy, right? It's going to be this, because today's communication, we saw this play out, right? Email was the dominant, it remains today, the dominant collaboration vector, and it'll evolve. But how do we evolve with the times in terms of protecting that human? That kind of orients us.
Yeah. A great example of the strategy in action is, in the session yesterday when I described our investments in Teams, both existing and upcoming, I didn't talk about it in the context of Defender for Office. I talked about it in the context of XDR, because there's investments that are being made across admin controls that we want for teams. There are investments being made across the user level controls we want for teams. Like users should be able to do things and get intelligence to do things. But the most exciting thing is when it comes to like the security teams, like the SOC teams, it's Defender for Office, Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Apps, Defender for Identity. That all of that is now coming together from the start, as opposed to in the future where we've had to pull it together. We are now building it together.
Yeah.
So that's the cool journey we're on with teams. It's actually looking at it across the entire surface, not just as okay, we've got a problem that we're going to have to go solve with Defender for Office.
And to finish a bit up, I'm a customer. I'm using Defender for Office within the XDR suite, for example. I have feedback. I can go into the customer connection program if I'm a customer or if I'm a partner or whatever. Are there any other ways that I can get feedback to you guys that I know how to reach out?
You want to start? Then?
Sure. I mean, so it's a broad question, so I'm going to take it at the highest level. Of course, most customers have account teams, and of course, they have ways and mechanisms to get feedback to us. But let's say if you're a customer, you're in the portal and you want to give us feedback. There's actually ways in the portal to give us feedback. We on the inside actually triage that feedback. Our PMs, our product managers, are looking at that feedback day in, day out. So that's kind of the plain vanilla answer. But I'd say if you want to get us feedback, just get us feedback. Like, leverage your account teams, leverage the product, pick up the phone, call us like you do.
Yeah.
We really value it. Our MVPs are a great source of our feedback. They are great at getting, and I've had so many great conversations this week. Not one of them has not had feedback on features, on requests, on how we could do things better. And it's golden for us. We really treasure it.
Yeah.
And I'll expand on what Sumit said. When we think about the types of feedback we get, there's obviously things that we want to make available and more easily to customers, right? You think in terms of one of the primary sources of feedback we get, which is, hey, is this good or bad? And help me reason over it. I mean, those are submission flows that we kind of make available in the portal, right? We're on a journey to say, how do we, across the portal, how do we help customers and give them mechanisms not just for self-help, but give them mechanisms to actually relay feedback to us. Right? The submissions flow is a good example, but sprinkled around the portal is, the thumbs up, thumbs down kind of experiences that gives us hints on, hey, is this working well or not?
Yeah.
Internal telemetry suggests, how customer flows are working or not. So we're constantly keeping a pulse on that. And the reason we show up in force in forums like this is because we want to build those connections in other ways, beyond all the attributes.
Yeah. And I love the fact that you are here. I told already that 3 times, I guess. But what I want to point out is that the thumbs up, the thumbs down in the portal really works. I had a conversation with Lior Bela on that as well.
Right.
Because in the portals, you guys are doing stuff and telemetry, whatever, with all that kind of information that customers are doing. So if you are listening or viewing to these, use that feedback buttons as well.
Yes, please do.
So many thanks for joining me on this recording. This will be online in the next few weeks. I will let you know before. So many thanks to that you are here, that you are participating.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yes. And if you are looking to this video, thumbs up, like and subscribe as always, because you want to know when the new video is online. So stay tuned for the next one. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.